Good evening. Welcome to the March 8th, 2016 meeting of the Middle School Building Committee. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag right over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Approval of meeting minutes. Mark?
Okay, good evening. The meeting minutes that are included in your package differ slightly from the meeting minutes that were distributed to you electronically. Jennifer Battershell made some suggestions to some edits to some of the comments that were attributed to Jennifer. So I've made those changes, and those changes are included in the meeting minutes that you've been provided this evening. So those are the meeting minutes that we're looking for approval at this time.
Okay. So I'll request a motion. George, second? Anybody second? Judy? Discussion on the minutes. All those in favor? Aye.
Whoops, you got a discussion.
Yes, Roy.
I don't know what the changes are. I read the minutes this afternoon.
Mark?
Oh, okay. The changes are, okay, on page 5 of 8.
Yep.
One that I recall is in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. The
Starts with Battershall?
Battershall states that she is concerned about the size, and it clarified it to say the small lockable units to provide some additional clarification. And further down, it was changed slightly where it says she notes that from her perspective, it is not realistic for students to have storage areas in the classrooms. It was just a slight change to that sentence.
Okay.
So what we're seeing here is the edited version?
Edited version,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, anything else?
Minor thing. It says that I toured Tewksbury High School.
I'm sorry, what are you,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yes, Ms. Miller, what are you looking at?
Page 7.
Okay,
It states that I toured Tewksbury High School. It was actually Shrewsbury High School.
Shrewsbury with an S, high school, okay,
Right.
thank you. Anything else, Mark?
Tewks and Shrews are very good.
Actually, wait a minute, it was Shrewsbury Middle School.
Shrewsbury Middle School, thank you. Mark, anything else?
I don't believe so. Jennifer, you may recall better than I your exact.
I just elaborated on some of the quotes that were in there. I elaborated a little bit more to make it clear.
Can you point to where else that evidence?
Oh, I think,
Are these your quotes, Jennifer? So we're just
Yes,
looking for
only
your name.
mine.
So at the bottom of page 5, there's, your name shows up. Is there any change there?
Yes. I quoted originally that I was asking whether or not the charging stations were in the construction or the FF&E budget. That was my question.
Okay.
And on page, I believe 7, I clarified that I would like to see another meeting on the interior materials.
Okay.
So it was just elaborating a little bit more on what I had said.
And those are reflected. You see those,
Yes.
Roy? Okay. All right. Yes, Mr. Manzo.
Just a couple of housekeeping things on the front page under members present. I am no longer the president of the Beverly School Committee. Never fear, you can just take that word and move it all the way down to, it says Chris Silverstein, 6 from the bottom, who's now the president of the school committee. And then midway through the list, Joanna Scott Murphy is actually Joanna Murphy Scott.
Okay, thanks. Joanna Murphy Scott. Anything else?
far as I can tell.
And again, we'll correct those, and the ones that will be posted will contain the correction.
So as you heard those couple of edits made, the edits on page 1 and Ms. Miller's edit of changing Tewksbury High to Shrewsbury Middle, and the edits that Ms. Badershall had asked for were already made and are included here. So, anything else? Okay, then all those in favor? Opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you. Next agenda item is a design development update. So, Mark?
Okay, again, in your package, there's a copy of the updated budget as well as the updated schedule. The project continues on budget, and again, at this early stage, the invoices to date are primarily just from the owner's project manager, the designer, and the CM. But as the project incurs other costs, FF&E costs, other consulting costs, et cetera, they'll also be identified and included in the monthly budget updates that are distributed to the members. The project is on schedule. The abatement and demolition continue as you drive by. You can see the interior abatement is basically complete. The window abatement is underway on the back side of the building. Many of the windows have been removed. The utilities have been disconnected, including the gas and electric, and the structural demolition is just underway. The pile driving and early site work packages are out to bid. There was a pre-bid meeting on site earlier today, which a number of us attended. The bids for that package, and again, this is part of the bids that the CM, the construction manager, will receive, are due on the 16th of March. There's a meeting with the construction manager, the architect, civil engineer, geotechnical engineer tomorrow, which I'll attend, to go over some of the questions on settlement analysis that was done by the geotech, utility settlement issues, surcharging, dewatering, and that's just to point out that there are ongoing meetings with the professional engineering staff to address issues involving the construction manager, so we continue to press the project in an on-time, on-budget, cost-effective fashion. The peer review, spoke about that a little bit at the last meeting. The peer review is underway. We did receive a number of comments from Victor Verma, who's the peer review engineer. They were responded to within 48 hours by EDG, the structural engineer, so that seems to be tracking pretty well. With respect to the materials testing and inspection, the RFP was out, responses were received. We received 4 proposals, and those proposals are being reviewed as we speak. We'd expect to make a recommendation to award that contract prior to April 1st, so that that firm is up and available and on board when we need them, when we start the pile driving operation. So that's kind of it from an OPM and an overview standpoint.
Questions? Oh, yeah.
Any kind of recycling or surplus materials sale from the deconstruction?
Sure. Well, yeah. In fact, it's a disassembly operation more so than demolition. And I mean, you probably know the numbers more specifically than I, but it's the majority of it's recycled.
Yeah, there really isn't a sale, if you will, but all of the wastes are segregated on site. So we've had separate truckloads of sheet metal, steel, concrete, any of the wood debris, all that's separated and segregated before it's hauled off site. In the last 10 years, we don't have totals just yet, but in the last 10 years, our projects average between 94 and 96% by weight recycled material coming off the job.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, next part of this update is what?
Would be for AI3.
Okay.
We, as you might imagine, at this point in time in the development of the construction documents, there's a lot of activity going on. So tonight, we spent a little bit of time this week just trying to prepare a summary so that building committee can get a sense of all the things that we're, along with Heary and our consultants, are sort of staying on top of. So we're going to just walk through that list of items. And starting with, I don't know if you guys were aware or not, but there was a presentation to the school committee this month. Troy was involved in that, so Troy, I'll just let you speak to, or Dr. Hershey speak to that meeting.
Yeah, we were invited by Ms. Silverstein to attend the last school committee meeting and talk briefly about the development of the current drawings, the status of the overall design process, and the integration of the educational program to the building floor plans, the building site, and the development of that and where we're heading over the next several months to completion of the documents to 100% in September. So that's a brief synopsis of what we did. I don't know if anybody wants to elaborate, but that's generally what we spoke about.
We just appreciate you coming and filling us in, and BevCam captured it on cable as well, so people can look it up if they want to see your presentation.
Sure.
It's also posted on the website, the school website.
Yes.
If you want to see it.
Just going through the next item on the list, you can see here. As we go through these topics and slides, feel free for the individuals who attended the meetings and provided input and guidance in the process to interject or to fill in some of the gaps. We certainly want to make sure that everybody gets their voices heard. But going through the technology security meeting, we had it's a continued discussion meeting to talk about the classroom technology, talk about security within the building. The classroom technology talked through the various options of technology today, but also trying to project into the future with how in 18 months or 2 years what's going to be occurring, which is a lifetime from now with the technology. We talked about interactive projectors. We talked about interactive LCD TVs. We talked about flat panel TVs with integration of Apple TV. At this point during the design process, the group migrated for a variety of reasons to the LCD TV interactive Apple TV process and integration within each of the classrooms. We also talked about security. We'll get into security in a little while. The various components of access and intrusion detection and a few others that we'll talk a little bit further within the presentation.
Technology is a little bit confusing unless you've been involved in an MSBA project before, but just for point of clarification, all of our discussions around specific pieces of technology hardware, for example, like the Apple TV devices, is not because we're trying to make a decision about the procurement of that specific device at this point in time. All of that will come out of the technology and furniture and equipment budget, which is a separate budget from the construction budget, and we'll wait as long as possible to purchase that so that we get the absolute latest technology available. But we want to make sure anything we're doing in the building infrastructure is able to support that. So many of these discussions early on are just trying to make sure we've got the right building infrastructure, knowing that the trigger wouldn't be pulled on some of this technology for almost a couple of years.
I just add that on the security front, that meeting was the second extensive meeting on security features that we've had, and not the last.
And we do have, I think Troy mentioned, but we do have later tonight a summary of all of the things that are being done or considered relative to security and technology. We know that some members have an interest in that. We're going to talk about it a little bit. We're going to be careful what we say and how much detail we provide. Certainly you're welcome to talk with us directly or talk with the superintendent directly about those decisions, but publicly we don't want to review detailed decisions that have been made with regard to security. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on.
So the only thing I would add to technology is Judy's been busy on the road.
Oh, yeah. We've made several field trips.
Yeah.
Over
Even today.
Today, yeah.
Making sure that we know the direction that makes sense for us in a cost-effective way. And we've made some pretty interesting decisions as those visits have occurred and as we've thought about what makes the most sense for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've gotten some very good information and even saved some money, I think.
So I'm going to remind all of us that we are on the second bullet point of 14 on the very first slide. So let's get moving.
Geo, this should be an easy one. The next two, actually. Geotechnical investigations. As you may recall, at the last meeting, we discussed additional geotechnical borings occurring on site. Those did occur. There are 4 of them, which provided the design team and our engineers, the structural engineers, more detailed information on very specific locations in the building footprint to allow us to more closely hone in on the depths of the steel H piles. That occurred, and then a coordination meeting occurred after that to refine the documents accordingly.
Did we make any money on this one?
We'll see in a couple weeks. The geotechnical documents have been issued to Agostini Bacon. It's out to bid, and I believe the 16th, where Agostini's going to receive the bids.
Last time we had this discussion, you were talking about being able to use shorter piles.
And hoping that will translate into some savings, but we won't know for a bit
Still
yet.
don't know that yet. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. The next item with the design development commissioning specification. Just want to point out here that BR+A engineers, the commissioning agent assigned by the MSBA for the project, has reviewed the design development documents, provided comments. We have then, and our engineers have responded to those comments. They have also provided the design team with the building commissioning specification, which will be included in the 60% CDs. It's about a 60-page document, as well as the commissioning specification identifies the requirements for commissioning of systems, mechanical, electrical, fire protection systems within the building, including technology. And then there's a separate specification related to the building envelope and the various tests, whether it's a roof uplift test or a flashing test. The building envelope also will see a series of tests during construction related to the building commissioning component. Just want to let you know that all 3 of those documents are up on the FTP site, so you can take a look at them, provide any thoughts, comments that you may have, or it just may be of interest to you.
We had, one of the things we've got here is the Revit Clash Detection Coordination Meeting, and I just want to say a couple things. Number one, as far as we can tell, based on the MSBA's feedback, this is the first project to be developed with a full Revit model. And so it's been kind of fascinating to see the development. Even when we held this building and underground clash detection meeting, there really is value in having all the consultants on Revit and seeing what's uncovered in this review process. And we don't talk about it that much, but we certainly want you to know that there's ongoing coordination and use of that model that the building committee committed to. We've also had additional meetings. As a result of the building committee's feedback, we had additional meetings surrounding the student personal storage units and how that's going to be handled. And we've gone back to the administration and charged them with thinking about it more. And we're not prepared to report on that tonight, but there are ongoing discussions that take into consideration all the comments from the last meeting, and we had a school administration meeting specifically focused on that with all the specific players at the table to discuss it further.
The next one, the auditorium theater design meeting. We've started the discussions with Judy as well as
Lynn.
the music and drama with our consultant, Barbizon, and it was the beginning of the discussions related to the theatrical component, the audiovisual component of the auditorium, the projection screens, the microphones, the lighting, and the overriding component was to make it as user-friendly and as simple as possible. And because a lot of this equipment the students will be learning on, and it doesn't, whether you go with an analog or digital, the quality of the sound is very, very similar, but it's so much easier for a student to learn an analog, whether that's soundboard or the lighting. And so we talked a lot with our consultant. Our consultant met with Judy and Lynn to talk through that component of the program.
I have a quick question about the theater program. Are you going to be implementing any type of hearing ability for the hearing impaired?
Yeah, as part of the accessibility code, we have to provide the assisted listening devices.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
6 more. Keep you moving.
Mr. Mayor, should we order
The clash detection. The next one is clash detection also. Scott mentioned that. The kitchen, or the next one, preliminary energy efficiency report. We're going to wait to talk about that. We have a specific slide for the report. Kitchen food service meeting we had with our consultant, Crabtree McGrath, as well as the administration, and Miss Antonelli and Miss Sherborne, to talk through the middle school, or the 5-6, the 7-8 food service areas, the separation of serving, the design of the kitchen and sequencing of the kitchen, its relationship to the loading, its sequence of deliveries, and we have an upcoming meeting which will likely occur in the next 2 to 3 weeks to continue to refine the layouts of those 2 spaces. We also talked about the connection between the primary kitchen on the 1st floor and the warming kitchen on the 3rd floor with the 7-8 team. The green team, we had a meeting to talk through with JRM, with city officials, with teachers within the school, and also the administration, to talk through primarily from the recycled trash program that they have, which is fantastic, from classroom to dumpster, that process, every single step along the way, and how that works with the quantity of totes, the size of totes, the locations, the sequence, and also the program from cafeteria to dumpster, or cafeteria to recycle. And so we talked through a lot of detail about how that would integrate with mobile carts, with the recycle program, and its integration into the building footprint. We've had
question.
Yeah.
Did the recycling conversation include composting?
It did. Yeah. Composting in the neighborhoods, and then we also talked about it in the classrooms as well. And ultimately decided if it was in each classroom, it's a little bit overkill. But if there were locations within the neighborhoods that could include composting, that would work really well.
One more question. Did the topic of security in recycling, as far as where the placement of certain recycling bins are in public areas, come up?
Yep. Yeah, we talked about their location in the classrooms, their location in the neighborhoods, location in the each cafeteria, and how twice a week, 3 times a week, depending on the size of the tote and the location, the students would take and distribute or bring the recycling from the classrooms to the totes all the way down to the custodial area, and then out from that point it would be taken out by the staff.
And how that relates specifically to security concerns.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Some communities prefer not to have recycling bins or receptacles in corridors.
Right.
Yep.
So, okay.
Yeah, in that specific location, it's not directly in the corridor,
Right.
and that's, yep, exactly.
There was a branding and identity meeting, and we haven't talked a lot about this, but we do have as part of our team a specific branding and signage consultant that has been working on ideas for branding the new middle school and incorporating educational thought and idea and innovation into it. So they presented some of their ideas to the school administration this month, just last week.
Now,
I'm sorry, you have a question?
yes, when you say that, is the school going to be called Beverly Middle School? Are you thinking of changing the name, or are they doing graphics only? Or
My expectation is the school will be called the Beverly Middle School.
okay.
There are some questions we're grappling with about how to appropriately and properly continue to memorialize or, pay homage to some of the figures and sentiments behind the early names. I mean, Briscoe was a family in Beverly. Memorial was meant to, honor those who've given their life. So looking at different components of the project, but given that we are going to, well, we're at one middle school, but we're moving forward with one middle school, that seems the appropriate way to, to go forward.
And will they also be looking into exterior signage, or is that strictly AI3?
Exterior, I mean, we certainly involve them in some exterior signage discussion, but many times we, along with our site consultants, take the lead on exterior signage.
Okay.
We had we received a bit of a surprising letter from Mass DEP.
Let me take that one.
Okay.
Mass DEP reached out to us and they suggested that they might need to hold us up a bit because there's a wetland, as you know, the wetland on the property closest to Bald Street. They noted that we're planning to pipe all of the stormwater runoff. We collect it and take it off site, and they had a concern that the wetland might dry up. So they were planning to come out this week and do a site walk with us. We were able to provide them with all the documentation of what happens on site today. Showed them that there's no stormwater runoff from the site to the wetland, and that answered their questions, and they withdrew their concerns. So it was a good good bit of due diligence by DEP as a state agency, and our team did a tremendous job. Both AI3's consultants is a PAR, who's on the PAR, and our DPS and engineering and wetlands specialists in the planning department. So, good communication and sharing of information, and it answered all the questions. It prevented there from being what would have proven to be an unnecessary delay. So it was a good example of state agency and the local community working well together. Enough said or no?
I would say a good example of the local community resolving things very quickly, because what they essentially did is appeal the project and issue us a stop work order on the current work, but that got lifted immediately and full steam ahead. So thanks to everybody in the city who was working behind the scenes to provide them with the necessary information.
Yeah, no, thank you. And the good thing is that the regional director of DEP reached out to me directly immediately, and that was able to get the ball rolling on addressing their concerns. So, and you're right, the Commissioner Mike Collins, Greg St. Louis, our engineer, Aaron Clausen, the planning director, and Amy Maxner, planning department employee who staffs the Conservation Commission, really took the lead on all of this. It was great.
The next item, and the several after that. The first is coordination with BevCam. We met with Kim and his group regarding the space adjacent to, within the library, but adjacent to the library work area as the multimedia makerspace to incorporate the educational requirements from the district, as well as trying to integrate BevCam into that space, that process, developing that space as a functional space for broadcast of meetings, and having meetings such as this in that library space. So we've gone back and forth. It's been very helpful with information related to the requirements of that space, with all of the sight lines, the equipment, the ceiling heights, the pipe battens, the structure, and the green screen, everything related to that. All of the other items listed after that component are all things that are occurring virtually on a day-to-day basis. The design team is communicating, whether that's with our mechanical engineer, structural engineer, civil site, code consultants, talking through a lot of the detail that goes into a day-to-day. We'd be here forever if we talked about each of those. We'll skip through all those items.
And then just briefly on building product reps, as we are trying to come to decision on various building products. Epoxy terrazzo is certainly a relatively unique, although we've talked about its fantastic quality and long-lasting ability and all the reasons it makes for a good value in the building. It's not utilized terribly often in school facilities, particularly public school facilities, but we want to make certain that we're reaching out to as many manufacturers, suppliers, and reps for that as possible, because it's not as if they just have standard colors. Almost every single epoxy floor, the ones here at the high school, involves a custom mix of the aggregates, and so we've started them mixing some aggregates and preparing some samples that we'll be taking a look at and making sure that our specification is open to as many of them as possible. We also made one last reach out to a couple of polished concrete manufacturers just to verify that what we had already found was true, that in fact it really wouldn't be the kind of finish that we'd want to utilize in the school, and we couldn't expect it without expending a significant amount of money. We couldn't expect the result that we had seen in some other facilities. Interior shades has been really important because as we've talked about, in many parts of the building we want transparency, but we also want the ability to gain some privacy, so we've been talking to manufacturers on that. The ceilings, we wanted to mention Idea Paint because we certainly think that it would be a good idea if in many of the locations where we're proposing marker board space, we instead use Idea Paint. I don't know if any of the building committee members are familiar with it, but it's about the same cost as a marker board, and it allows a lot more flexibility on how you size and locate markable surfaces within the school facility. So we held meetings to review that and with the representatives for that product, and then already starting to meet and talk with carpet and flooring reps. We did, as was mentioned, release the early package, and as we're now looking towards the steel package and the site package, in the office we're kind of prioritizing all of the things that we have to accomplish to lock in on those packages. For example, once we release that pile package, we know that the locations for all our major columns are never going to change again. Once we release the steel package, we know every piece of steel in the building is exactly where it's going to be and nothing's going to be able to move. So that is prioritizing what we're doing now in the office, and one of the reasons that we're starting to get in this methodical sort of organization of how things are being evaluated, considered, and completed.
We mentioned earlier that the Anderman Lelick, our consultant, who is doing a whole building energy performance evaluation of the building and the systems, which is part of the MSBA requirements, part of the LEED requirements. And one of the things that we can say confidently is that the building is, I mean, it says 21.4% energy cost savings. That is, I don't know if many of you know, but that is very, very good. And as a comparison, if you take the energy cost savings or the energy efficiency of the new building, it'll be over 35% more efficient than this building here, than the high school. And the one of the reasons is, I mean, with the even with the last few years, is that the baseline, the codes change, and the baseline gets more and more stringent, and so that is a pretty significant component. That's all you see here, the numerous energy savings features. A few components that attribute significantly to that is the building envelope performance. We've talked a lot in the past about the efficiency of the building envelope and the efficiency of the walls, the windows, the roof, and then also going 100% LED lighting. That, as opposed to 3, 4, 5 years ago, that wasn't even an option. The cost for LED lighting has reduced tremendously over the last few years. And then various HVAC efficiency components with chillers, equipment, controls related to it. So we're in a really good position overall, and all of the work that has gone in discussions that everybody has contributed to has resulted in this really
Before you
good
change
efficiency.
that right question, George?
When you say 21.4% savings, relative to what?
That's over the baseline. Like the energy code right now sets a very high bar and says you have to be this efficient. And so the report suggests that the building that we're proposing is going to be 21.4% more efficient than
Just meeting code.
Than just meeting code,
Okay,
right.
thank you.
And you're suggesting roughly 35% more efficient than this building because the baseline was
Was lower.
less stringent, as you say, lower back several years ago.
That is correct.
Janet has a question. I think I'll repeat it since you're far from the microphone, so go ahead.
At this point, are you and your consultants and the project team working with the utility companies and looking at incentives?
Yes.
So the question is whether you're working with utility companies to look at different incentives on
equipment
on efficiencies.
and so forth, you can get
Okay.
money back.
National Grid.
Yeah, yes, yeah, the answer is yes. And in fact, we have been working with NML Lelick and N-Grid since schematic design to work through and discuss the positioning of the building, the orientation, the scale, the system. So they've been involved throughout the entire process. And in fact, the next step is taking this report and identifying improvements that we can make, incremental improvements on even this system and this design here. And we've got an upcoming meeting and conference next week to discuss all those components and how we can even improve the 21.4.
But Ingrid did get on very early, was very early on board on this project with a goal of trying to maximize all of the grants and incentives they could get back to the city. So it looks very positive.
Yeah.
Maria? Did you have?
You want me to ask something?
No, I thought you had your hand up a minute ago.
Let's see. How about air conditioning? Do we have air conditioning in the building?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Okay, good. Yeah. Is that all right? That's my-
Which areas are air conditioned?
I'm sorry, Jennifer. Joe? What's your minute?
We had talked about before, as far as air conditioning goes, that you were just looking to dehumidify the classrooms. Is that still a plan, or are we looking at full air conditioning throughout the building?
It's still
a hybrid.
dehumidification. We consider that a kind of air conditioning, essentially cooling the air and taking the humidity out. That occurs everywhere. And then all of the administrative spaces, library, media center, all classrooms would have full air conditioning. Classrooms would be dehumidification. All those other spaces I mentioned would be full air conditioning.
One thing that we did do based on the discussions with the city and also the Green Subcommittee is is it's really kind of a hybrid scenario where classrooms that are maybe south or southwest facing get a larger volume of air, and the north side, it's sort of the balancing, as you know very well, on that system. So it's more controllable.
Will we see those kind of features on the 60% set?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
It really wasn't there on the previous
That's right.
PD set.
Yep.
Okay.
You got it. Yep.
Jennifer?
Will the auditorium be air-conditioned?
Yes.
Yes.
And if so, have you thought about the ceilings in the auditorium, if they'll be wood veneer, or a different product? The only reason I ask is because if the system goes down, sometimes, for example, Armstrong doesn't warranty their wood ceilings.
For humidity. Yeah.
Yeah, so we would just want to be careful with that.
Right.
Sure.
George?
Back to the air conditioning. I thought you were going to air condition the south side rooms to take care of the sun load, and the rest of the building was going to be just dehumidified.
The south side
essentially
rooms are getting, by
that's what we're
getting more
talking about.
volume of air.
Are they getting cold air?
Yes, they're getting cold air.
Okay, thank you.
We said we were going to talk globally about safety and security, so we just wanted to mention to the building committee, again, I would encourage you, if you have specific questions, not to speak for Dr. Hershey, but certainly he's the one who holds many of the answers on these things, he's included in all the meetings, because ultimately the school will be operating this facility. But we've included certainly the Beverly Police, Beverly Fire, school administration, and city representation as we talk about all these issues. And we've discussed on multiple occasions a variety of different standard protocols which will be in place for the school. But then we've also talked about all of the passive safety features that we want to incorporate into the building organization in terms of site approach, pathways layout, visible sight lines for entry, sequence of entry, smaller cohort sizes in terms of the building neighborhoods and breaking those down, and how security is going to happen in those places. We've also talked about, on the next slide, more specifically, the active systems that will be incorporated into the building, locating every single camera, both interior and exterior, the access controlled system, and what levels of tier operation we want to have available there, and which staff will have access to that. The intrusion detection system, which is less of a security and more of a nighttime feature. Bidirectional amplification to assist police and fire inside the building with constant communication, as well as the staff. And then obviously just basic life safety things like a fully sprinkled building, emergency lighting, et cetera, and emergency power. Dr. Hershey has shared with us administrative policies with regard to and how those will be implemented, and shared with the police department the practices and some of the training that will take place and some of the enforcement. So all those kinds of discussions are happening. We won't be talking specifically about the results of those, but a lot of good conversation going on around safety and security.
Jennifer?
Perhaps this is a question that I could ask you offline. Otherwise, have you talked about how the students will enter the school through the cafeteria during morning, and how that would be a controlled
that will
area?
actually be part of Matt's task, is to make sure that we look at that as we're going forward, to determine which of the entrances are going to be used, which kids are going to be appropriately going through those entrances in the morning, and where they're going to go once they go through the entrances. Talking about the buses unloading at the cafeteria, so in the winter it makes it very easy for the kids to go inside. So, we want to be able to do those kinds of things, but those are all procedures that, as we get to greater detail, we'll know exactly what to do, and then Matt can start putting into place what those procedures are. They're not actually a lot different than the procedures they have at Briscoe. It's just a much different building. And from a security standpoint, we've actually found that there's some opportunities for security in this building, the way it's designed, that we wouldn't have thought of going into it. Just evacuation alone, this is an easier building to evacuate than any other building we have. So it's really interesting.
And are there any measures being taken for security at the bus depot as far as lighting and cameras to prevent
Yes.
vandalism?
Yep.
Yes.
Both.
Okay.
That's it. That's all. That was our update tonight. That was our last topic.
Okay. That moves us on to hearing from Agostini Bacon, correct?
I'll be brief. I think most of our update has been repeated already earlier. As Mark said earlier, abatement is complete inside the building. Interior demolition is nearly complete at this point. Window demolition has been said. The auditorium wing is done. All the windows have been pulled out of the building. The back wing towards the west, all of the windows are out of that building as well. And they're working their way across the main wing that runs parallel to Cabot Street. The front wall of the auditorium as well as the roof of the auditorium are down. Structural demo started yesterday, and those were being loaded out today. We had several trucks hauling that material off the site. And we expect in the next few weeks, all except for the gym, all of the entire school building will be down on the ground by the end of this month. The gym may be another week or so behind that, but everything should be down by the middle of April. As has been said earlier, pricing on the structural piles and related site work is due in our office 1 week from tomorrow. We had a pre-bid meeting there today with several subs. We are targeting the end of this month to award 2 contracts, one for structural piles and one for related site work, so that we can do some of the clearing and some of the backfill required to get ready to drive piles. Looking ahead a little bit, in the month of April, we'll be expecting to backfill the boiler room, backfill the crawl spaces that are underneath the auditorium, bring all that up to grade, because the new academic portion of the building will be roughly about the same grade as Cabot Street there. So we'll be bringing in some backfill for that and raising that up to grade. And we hope to be driving the test piles. There'll be about a dozen test piles during the month of April, which will go down. We'll actually test the design assumptions and make sure that we've got the bearing capacity that we hope for, as well as testing the depth to bedrock with all the soil borings that we did. So a lot of work coming up. We're finally starting to gain some momentum. Thankfully had a mild winter as far as snow goes, and we're trying to just deal with that out there now and hopefully roll into structural piles and early site work next month.
Bob, just take a minute on the number of piles that will be driven and the kind of expected pace.
The piles, we're estimating about 1,280 piles so far. That's the current count. That's what's roughly on the drawings that are being issued right now. They're going to vary, in our opinion, in length from about 50 feet long as you are closest to Cabot Street to as much as 70 feet long as you get down further away from Cabot Street. The contractors are expecting to drive somewhere in the order of 20 to 25 of these every single day. Which is going to equate to approximately about 10 to 12 weeks to drive 1,200 piles on the job site. And that'll be a constant process Monday through Friday. During normal hours, we're not anticipating any extended overtime or any weekend work. We're just going to keep plugging along and get as many piles in as we can.
And weather shouldn't be a factor unless it's really extreme.
The only thing that could pose a problem is if we have a real wet April that completely turns the site to unusable. It'll make it more challenging. It may slow things down a little bit, but there's nothing that we're anticipating that'll slow it down completely.
Maria.
Is that a noisy process, driving of the piles?
Less with soft clay, right?
Yeah.
Not as much banging.
Some of the soil borings that were done previously on the site, we've been told that as they pushed the soil boring equipment down through the clay, it was so soft that you could just sit there and watch it just drop right down through the clay. It is so soft that That's why they're expecting 25 of these things to be able to be driven in a single day. That's 25, 65 feet long. So you're talking 1,200, 1,400 feet. That's a lot of piles being driven in a day just because it is so soft.
And that will prevent this new school from sinking the way Memorial did.
The piles will go all the way down and rest on either, there's a very thin layer of sand and gravel between the bottom of the clay and the top of the bedrock. Our plan is to get down to the bedrock and rest on solid bedrock, unless we happen to hit some gravel and some sands that provide the bearing adequate enough to support the building. We've got a 65-ton bearing capacity that we're searching for, and the equipment that's on the drill rig can tell when they've reached that capacity, and that'll be part of the first dozen piles that we drive and we test. Once we get those test piles in, we'll actually do a bearing test on the site, specifically there on the piles that we've chosen with the soils that we've chosen to confirm that that is the bearing on the site that's capable of supporting the building.
And to answer your earlier question, there's noise involved, for sure.
Yeah,
You know,
good.
it's driving piles.
Wasn't really a question, but.
So
What's the window for the pile driving?
within our overall schedule?
Like, is it going to be a week or 10 days? Because I'm sure the neighbors are going to be.
Oh, no, here, 10 to 12 weeks.
10 to 12 weeks is the target.
Awesome.
3 months.
In the time frame on those 10 to 12 weeks?
We
calendar-wise?
You had a question?
The 10, yeah,
I'm sorry, I just, go ahead, Joe.
the 10 to 12 weeks we're talking about, which months of the year are we looking at?
We're hoping to award the contract by the end of March. We're hoping to do submittals and test piles in the month of April, and to be doing the production driving in May, June, and into early July. We hope to have the Zone 1 of the academic area, the academic wing closest to Cabot Street, piles driven, completed by end of May, beginning of June, so that we can actually start foundations in June, which would be earlier than what we had previously proposed. Our original target was foundations July, August, September. We're thinking that we can, if the award goes through and our test piles go according to plan, we're hoping to actually be thinking about starting foundations in June a little bit early.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the removal of any existing piles that are there, and where does that fit in the timeline? And is that one of the early packages that's going out to bid later this month?
Because the existing piles are a thin-walled corrugated steel concrete filled that have been there for 60 years, the prospect of trying to remove them out of the ground is near impossible. If it is possible, it's going to be extremely expensive. So what the design team did during design is we actually overlaid the existing design with the existing pile layouts as we know them. So we've tried to avoid as many of the piles as we possibly can. There may be 5% or less that we may encounter as we drill. Our plan, as soon as the first wing is down and demoed, our plan is to bring our surveyor in and do an as-built survey of the tops of the piles after the existing caps are done. Give that information to the structural engineer and do a quick check to see, do we need to expand the size of a pile to move this pile further out another foot or two to avoid what's under the ground there. Because we don't think we'll be able to pull those out, and if we did, it would be cost prohibitive.
Do you anticipate having to at least cut off some of the tops of those piles? Yeah.
The concrete cap that's there now, the existing concrete pile caps, the demo contractor has in their contract to cut those off, because we do have some clusters. If you've got 4 existing piles right now, our new design may have one being driven right in the middle of all 4 of those.
Okay. That it?
That's it.
Okay. Gosh, what did I have I wanted to say?
Just one thought that in addition to the commissioning documentation that's on the FTP site, the energy report, the initial interim energy report is also on there. I know some of you may want to take a look at it and take a look at all of the technical data related to the systems. Just wanted to mention that as well. That's up there.
Okay. I do remember what I wanted to say. There was early last week, we were able to get BevCam out to the site, get the Salem News and the Beverly Citizen out to the site, and have them get some footage of the beginning of the exterior demolition, which was fun. It was also a great milestone, to get that going. I was invited to get up on the, what do you call the equipment? The excavator. I was invited to get up on the excavator and drive it or operate it. I declined, do what you know. I didn't think that, I thought that the building, even though it's coming down, it deserved to not have its integrity compromised by me taking a swing at it with the excavator. Besides, there was no wrecking ball to swing. But it's quite a piece of machinery. That one piece of equipment with that one mouth, it looks like a T-Rex from what was that series of movies? Jurassic Park. But that one set of jaws is going to rip out the whole building. It's pretty impressive to watch it operate. So definitely excited with the progress. Any other business? That's really the next and last thing on the agenda. Maria?
Quick question. Community uses for the building, something said a multimedia maker space. Is that going to be open to the community, and will there be any other community uses?
I think we're looking to maximize the community uses and the community access to the facility. Dr. Hershey, specific to?
Well, we're looking at two uses. So we wanted to maximize the kids' use.
Mm-hmm.
So after-school activities, we want it to expand. But also, this is a facility in the right location with good-sized parking that can take some of the heat off the high school because the high school's used so much, but it should be community use. It's an expensive project. It's a good project for the community, and there's marvelous space in there for people to be able to use. So we need to sort that out and make sure our policies and procedures are in place to allow us to do that.
But potentially a maker space that the community could use? Is that what that was supposed to mean?
What was the one you're referencing? You want to go back to the slide?
In the, located adjacent to, in the library adjacent to the tech and library work area. Yep.
So what we've talked about is kind of designing it so that one of our problems here is we can't free stream we can't show it live, these meetings. So we're looking at it from that building, being able to have that maker space that can also serve to be able to do live broadcasts from there of meetings, as well as professional development for us so that we can broadcast professional development out, and also for the kids to do broadcasts. But we really want it to be a very usable space. We want it to be usable with BevCam as an extra piece.
Yeah, the BevCam.
Judy's dying to talk.
Ms. Miller.
I'm looking at Kim.
Ms. Miller.
They already bring the community in for training on, to learn production.
We do.
And I would imagine that might be another location for, that space over there could be used for your training of the community, that you train them on production. Yeah, right. So I think that would be a way to open it to the community using the resource we already have.
And Mrs. Miller is talking to Kim.
I already
behind the
made a
camera. Do you want to come out in front of the camera, Kim? And
Kim, can you
respond? Okay.
And
Maria?
how about the other maker space? Will that be open to the community?
I think that we haven't really thought about that yet, but I think, some of them certainly, we just have to worry about making sure that we have the equipment and stuff like that in the storage, and, we have a way to make sure that that's secure. But, if we really want to make it an active community area, there are the parts of this building that we want to make accessible to people, including the high school.
Yeah. I think part of it depends on the utility, right? If in a makerspace, the expectation is that typically student work and projects are going to be out and about, then that might not be the right space to bring the public into in the evening for other uses. But I think it's a question of the program, what spaces can be secured, work put away, the basic space made available to the public, and what can't. And clearly, we want to maximize that because it's a resource for all of us for decades going forward. Roy, and then Jennifer.
Is there anything else on the agenda that hasn't been addressed yet? Because I'm just trying to figure out where we are on the agenda. Are we done?
Oh, we're down to other business.
Okay. and it's getting pretty late, and I've had a long day, and I think people have. I understood we were going to have a further discussion about the locker, no locker issue, and I don't know if that issue is still a live issue. If it's still a live issue, I'd ask that we put on the agenda at an appropriate time. If it's not a live issue, I'd like to know where that is.
Sure. I would say that it's not ready to come back here for further discussions being worked on, and that, like many issues, it will be ultimately a decision made by the administration, but the more feedback and input that can be had in this venue, the better. So we will definitely be continuing to work through this set of issues and then share what we've got when we're ready to. Whether it can be at the next meeting, we'll see. It depends on how it progresses.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Jennifer?
I just have a couple quick questions, I guess they're for the school committee. I'm wondering if you have decided if you're going to dedicate some of the spaces in the new middle school, for example, naming them after someone or calling them Performing Arts Center with somebody's name, memorializing, say, the library, the auditorium, the gymnasium.
We have not had those conversations yet.
Do you plan on implementing that into the design of the school? I've worked on several projects where a community member has been named as part of the performing arts.
We have a policy, a school committee policy, that when things are named for somebody, the people who want to name that area need to bring it to the school committee for a review first, and then, so nobody has come forward yet to say they want anything named for anybody.
And it's at least a 45-day process of review, and so when that process starts, there's plenty of time to have both public and members of the school community weigh in on whatever proposal that's put before the school committee.
Okay. And also, is there a way the community can get involved? For example, I don't know what you're planning on doing for the exterior, but say buy a brick, or have someone donate artwork to the school, or I don't know if maybe the art department has considered making murals or using, doing something like tiles or display throughout the school, trying to bring the community into the school and getting people involved if they'd like to be involved. I think that's something that maybe should be put out there for people to.
Worth considering, sure.
Okay.
I mean, BevCam's had a preliminary conversation, but they're the only one that's had a preliminary conversation about that at this point.
The Beverly Education Foundation?
Yeah.
Share some thoughts. I don't mean right this minute necessarily, but, send some thoughts in.
Sure, I'll pass some things along. I do know, I've worked on a few schools in the past, recent schools that have named the library or the media center or the gymnasium after someone. So, it is important to the community. So I really think that should be considered.
Have those been done solely as ways to honor somebody, or has that been done as part of financing of a project as well?
Both. I can look more into that, but we're working on a project right now where the community is able to buy a brick. I don't know if bricks are going to be used.
Buy a plane.
Brick on the ground is part bricks
of
on the ground, like you're doing downtown.
Didn't we do that at Somerset?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, and maybe the art department would like to get involved with the interior design to come up with some designs for murals or what have you in some of the public areas.
Good thoughts to be considered. Why is my alarm on?
And one more thing quickly.
Yes.
I'm concerned, obviously, with maintenance of the school and making sure that this is something that will be around forever. I do have concern with interior design and how it will be maintained, especially in the cafeteria, where you're having that as your primary entrance during inclement weather. The use of rollout mats as opposed to recessed mats, we really should take that into consideration when planning.
Ongoing regular maintenance and other considerations for preserving the materials.
Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good.
And I think my other questions, we can maybe have just a discussion on. I don't know if that's something that I should run through AI3 or bring up during this meeting, but, you know, to be able to protect certain surfaces and maintain things.
Well, why don't you have a conversation with them? I mean, we know that you, by day, do a lot of the same work that they're doing, you know, in your professional life. So why don't you have that conversation?
Okay, great.
And we've got a question here. Yes, hi.
Yeah, just briefly, because we were just talking about naming parts of the building potentially. Just a reminder that the auditorium at Briscoe, as far as I'm aware, is the only thing that really has a name. It's the Goding Auditorium, named after Virginia Goding, who I didn't know, but she was well-known and loved
taught with her.
Teacher. So the auditorium at Briscoe right now is named after her, so it might just kind of to consider whether that's a name, because it was fairly recent, you know, it's only like probably 10 or 12 years ago, I think.
Right. No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, and then the other thing, just briefly about the community members and artwork and stuff like that, I just wanted to throw out there, AI3, when we did some visioning stuff, like, I don't know, a year and a half or a while ago, there was some discussion also of doing stuff potentially with current Briscoe students that would carry into the new building as a way of providing continuity for the students who are at Briscoe as they move from one building to another. So that's a little bit part of the, you know, similar thing with kind of having some visual stuff that carries over from, you know, one part of the community to another. So I just wanted to throw out a reminder about that too.
Sure. Thank you. And as you folks know, there are a good number of different plaques and other memorial items at both schools. And you know, we're at Memorial, they've all been secured and they're stored, and we'll be looking at all of that from both schools and trying to determine how to continue to acknowledge and honor the intent behind those and the individuals. And certainly, there are only so many things to name in a building, and once they're named, they're named. So, you know, we'll take a look at what already exists between the two buildings and try to go from there. So, any other thoughts before we adjourn? Before you make your motion, never knew you had so few slides. I would have let you ramble on that first one for a while longer. But thank you, and the presentations were all fantastic by everybody involved. Thank you all. Is there any reason that the second Tuesday won't be our April meeting?
If I would,
Yeah.
The high school chapter of the National Honor Society is having their induction ceremony
That evening.
That evening at 7 o'clock. And I know administrators and school committee members may have an interest in attending that.
A good point. I know we talked at our most recent morning working group meeting about the 60 and 90% submissions and submittal dates required, and the thought that we might go a month without a meeting prior to the May one, a month without a meeting prior to the August one. So how did we leave that?
We need to meet, and we need a vote to approve the submission of the 60% CD. That's May 11th?
May 11th.
May 11th is the date the package gets submitted currently.
Gets submitted.
MSBA. So we had talked about a very late April.
A late April in lieu of an April and a May?
Right.
Okay.
Especially after the income tax goes in. 15th of April.
Oh.
You remember that date?
I already submitted all mine. They're good. They're done. So, did we have a date in mind, or do we want to try to do it after tonight? I don't want to delay us here.
But there wasn't a date specifically.
Okay. Why don't we'll get to you folks. We're talking either last week in April, first week in May, for that meeting, and in lieu of an April meeting and a May meeting.
Still a Tuesday at 6:30 though.
If we can keep it to the same day of the week at the same time, we will. So we'll try to get that out in the next couple days. Mark, we touch base with me tomorrow on that, and we'll try to sort it. Okay. Then Ms. Vizic made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second to that? Second. Jordan, is there anything else before we take that adjournment vote? Okay. All those in favor of adjourning? Opposed? We are adjourned, and thank you very, very much.